Hello, YouTube. I'm a former Fire Mecca affiliate, and the owner of Fire Mecca has been spreading lies about me online and lies about our communication. The owner of Fire Mecca made a 20-minute video about this last month, and the entire thing is completely filled with lies. I'm going to show the receipts and evidence of our communication, showing you the gaslighting and lies that the owner of Fire Mecca is continuing to spread. If you think that you might want to be a Fire Mecca affiliate, this is a PSA to know how they treated me, which might inform you about whether or not you want to work with this person. There's so many lies in the video. If you're not interested in knowing what they're lying about, this is your chance to click off, to go to another video, close YouTube, whatever you want to do. This is your chance to not watch this. And if you think this video is a message specifically to you, you are probably mistaken. In this part of the video, Vivers talks about an email exchange that we had. They start out right with lies, saying that they, quote, outline, quote, boundaries that I had crossed, which I'm showing the email right here. There's no outline of boundaries that were crossed, and I would like to emphasize this communication took place supposedly after the owner of Fire Mecca was so disturbed about red flags that they had with me. That's what they said on this video. How someone could have that disturbing of a communication, but then tell them that they hope that we can communicate as allies and send me smiley faces and good morning texts doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to play what they say and then break down how all of these things are false. In a nutshell, they're going to lie about me accusing them of having anxiety and getting defensive. You can clearly see are just false statements right from the emails. So I know this is a little bit small on your screen. I'm going to read some of this. So what are they going to say?
April 8th, 2024. Vivers emailed Kastner outlining the boundaries he had crossed.
Okay, so this is the email that they write. Hi, Daniel. I also want to address some concerns that popped up yesterday. I don't know why this says also, because this is the first of the email. Also usually means like it's some addition. They're going to say that they felt uncomfortable. This is the first time in all of our entire communication. I have all the text messages in every Facebook Messenger, whatever. This is the first time that they've ever said I quote unquote made them feel uncomfortable about anything. So they start the email saying, I want to also address that popped up yesterday. We had this like conclave fire spinning practice. It was like 2 hours. And when it ended, when practice was over, quite a few people had left at that point. At the end of the practice, I walked up to Vivers and I proposed Vivers. Now, Vivers is in charge of this little conclave group. Clearly, they were coordinating and deciding things. At the end of the practice, I asked if perhaps, do you think next time, like the following week, or if it was in 2 weeks, we could consider doing practice at a location that has more accessible bathrooms? This one, if you had to use the bathroom, you had to walk almost 20 minutes to these porta potties, then like 20 minutes back. There's other locations that we could do the practice at that don't have that issue. I didn't tell them that that was what we had to do, but they were in charge of this. So I said, do you think maybe next week we could consider, I wasn't saying they had to decide it right then, but I said, do you think maybe next week we can consider a different location that has the bathroom accessibility, please? And that's it. In their email, they even say that, but let's go on. Concerns that popped up yesterday. They say, specifically alerting me that additional people are accompanying you into my home shop or listening to our phone conversations is common courtesy. Okay, we're going to talk about that too. The part about the practice in the bathrooms, they say, putting me on the spot aggressively at the end of practice because plans for next week aren't set in stone felt very uncomfortable. That's where they're talking about. I asked them if the next week we could pick a place with bathrooms. This email is the next day. Now, I don't know what exactly was so uncomfortable about that. I wasn't telling them that there's an issue because next week the plans aren't set in stone. I said, next week, please consider picking a place that has more accessible bathrooms. Understand, all of our communication up until this point is smiley faces and good morning texts. We just got the text leading up to this is, hey, I want to link you up with another Fire Mecca affiliate. There's no sign of any issues. They haven't communicated any sort of issues, asking if they can consider the bathroom situation when they're planning the next week. How that they ended up feeling like that was uncomfortable, I don't know. But what they said is putting me on the spot aggressively at the end of practice. I think the majority of everybody had already left. It wasn't during practice. I didn't interrupt practice. I didn't ask the question because plans aren't set in stone. I just asked the question. They go on to say, felt very uncomfortable. I don't know what exactly it was that made them feel uncomfortable. They've never said whatever they felt this aggressive thing. I still don't know. They've never said what it was, but they did say that whatever happened made them feel uncomfortable. Not so uncomfortable that they're saying, I don't want to speak to you. Not so uncomfortable that they say, please don't come back to practice. Not so uncomfortable that they said anything like that. They want to keep communicating. They say, so we can communicate as allies. Thanks for reading this. Thank you for being amenable. They say conclave is for fun. I will not allow people to turn it into a stressful, unenjoyable process. Now, they're in charge of this, okay? So someone who's asking a question about the bathroom situation, if that makes it so stressful, like, I don't understand how much more, like, simple of a question could you have? It's not even that complicated of a thing. And the reality is, they didn't really give a straight answer. All I was doing was communicating my concern. I didn't ask for an answer on the spot. It was like a suggestion. So what do they say in the video?
Kastner replied defensively, justifying his actions and accusing Vivers of being anxious.
Okay. So this is the email that they sent me. They just said,
Kastner replied defensively, justifying his actions and accusing Vivers of being anxious.
Now, I did reply, and I agreed with them. I said, you know what, I get that, and they never communicated this type of boundary to me before, but I say that I heard everything that they said, and that makes sense. As far as listening to our phone conversations, when I went to go pick up the rope dart, me and my mentor, we got in my car. We had a rough time, like early afternoon, to come pick up the rope dart. I got in my car, started my car. I believe I was still in the parking lot, just starting to roll forward. I dial Vivers and I put them on speakerphone because I was driving, and it was about a 20-second phone call of, hey, I'm on my way. I'll be there in about 20 minutes. Is that still cool? Sounds good. Okay, see you in 20 minutes. Click. That was it. It wasn't like someone was there listening to some intimate phone conversation. It was like a 20-second conversation while I'm driving saying, hey, if I get there in 20 minutes, is that still cool? Yeah, okay, see you in 20 minutes. Now, in my email response, I say, hey, I totally understand that with the phone call thing. And I say, I understand that with, if I was shopping with a friend, but I get that. You could say that these are outlining boundaries, but to say that I crossed some boundary that Vivers had already communicated would not be correct. So they say I accused her of having anxiety. Here's that email. They say in their video, accused me of having anxiety. So I sent this email. Would you say that in general you tend to deal with anxiety? Chronic or situational anxiety? I'm asking because it might help our friendship. The reason that I asked this is because when they said they felt very uncomfortable when I asked them if we could have a better bathroom situation next week, I was like, how could that question have made someone feel so uncomfortable? I'm thinking, like, what is going on with them that a question about the bathrooms made them feel uncomfortable? And I didn't understand anything that could have been interpreted as aggressive. So I'm thinking, well, a person who has like an anxiety disorder, maybe that is why they had all these feelings. Like, you can talk to someone who has really bad anxiety and you can just say, hey, how's your day going? And they could feel uncomfortable, which isn't your fault. It's their anxiety. In their video, they said, I accused her of having anxiety, which is completely false. I asked them. See, I'm asking, would you say that in general you tend to deal with anxiety? I'm asking because it might help our friendship. I go on to say, I basically don't have anxiety at all. If I have friends or acquaintances that have anxiety, it helps if I know that, so I can be extra sensitive. That's not accusing someone of having anxiety. That's asking someone who, from all of our previous interactions, have been like good friends. They've never told me before that they have some anxiety problem or some anxiety disorder. They never acted like this towards me before. And I'm asking, do you have anxiety? So let's add that to the list. So we've got a list of reasons Vivers needs a restraining order. We have being contacted first when you first meet them, expressing interest in Vivers nonprofit but not attending any events, broaching uncomfortable topics, never says what the topics are. Maybe they just get uncomfortable all the time and you have no idea when they're going to feel uncomfortable. They can make up a story about petting a cat. Talking about topics Vivers considers abnormal, although you're never going to know what that is beforehand. Just something they think is abnormal to them needs a restraining order, and then not following Vivers' secret rules that they don't tell you. Now we have asking if they have anxiety. Needs a restraining order, according to Vivers. Again, listen to what they say in the video.
And accusing Vivers of being anxious. And accusing Vivers of being anxious. And accusing Vivers of being anxious.
I didn't accuse them of being anxious. I asked them if they have anxiety. This is the only thing that made sense based on them saying that they felt uncomfortable from asking about the bathrooms. How they interpreted me asking, can we pick a place with more accessible bathrooms at the end of practice, how that was ever interpreted as aggressive, I have absolutely no idea. But clearly they felt uncomfortable. Someone who has anxiety, you can ask them what they had for breakfast. They could feel uncomfortable about that if they have anxiety. I'm like, why would this person feel this way? Maybe they have anxiety. So I asked. I did not accuse them of being anxious. So just be careful when you're talking to this person. Don't ask if they're like dealing with anything, because they could interpret that as needing a restraining order if you ask them about their mental health. The other thing that they say is I got defensive, which is also false, and I'm going to show you that. This is my response to people accompanying you into my home and putting me on the spot aggressively at the end of practice made me feel uncomfortable. This is what they say is defensive. I think I highlighted all the times I said I'm sorry. To the owner of Fire Mecca, this is defensive. I would like to emphasize that I hear everything you've written. I really do. I'm very sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I wrote I'm sorry 1, 2, 3 times here. That's defensive.
Kastner replied defensively, justifying his actions. Kastner replied defensively, justifying his actions.
To Vivers, I wrote that I hear you. I'm very sorry. Anything I did to make you feel uncomfortable was not intended. I couldn't understand in what world she took me asking the question about the bathrooms as aggressive, but instead of saying I wasn't being aggressive, instead of saying, how dare you accuse me that I didn't do anything wrong, I said, everything I did to make you uncomfortable was not intended. Again, I say, I hear what you're saying. I would never intentionally want to make you feel bad. I'm admitting sometimes things can go wrong. Sometimes things can be misinterpreted. There could just be a body language thing that happened. Maybe it was like the way I was standing. I don't know. But I'm acknowledging that something happened that made them feel bad and feel uncomfortable. And I want to let them know whatever happened, this was not intentional. And I write, it doesn't take away that you still felt bad and uncomfortable, and I'm sorry about that.
Kastner replied defensively, justifying his actions. Kastner replied defensively, justifying his actions.
This is a defensive, according to Vivers. I say, yeah, I hope that we can talk about these things more sometime, because they said in their email, so we can communicate as allies. I hope if we talk about these things, it'll help our relationship. That's defensive. I even said that we can talk about this sometime in the future, aka not urgent. I said that because I'm hearing this from someone who is saying that they felt uncomfortable and that they interpreted something that I did that I still don't know what this is was aggressive. So I want to let them know I don't need a response right away. When someone is saying that you made them feel uncomfortable, I mean, the last thing I want to do is say to them, like, we need to talk about this right now or anything like that. So I say this is not urgent. Sometime in the future, when it makes sense, we can talk. Then I say, if we ever talk about this, I say I'd be willing to, because it could possibly help our friendship. I think this is the part that they think was defensive. After saying, I'm very sorry, and I'm sorry you felt uncomfortable, I didn't intend to make you feel bad, and I hope you know that. I hear everything you're saying. I'm sorry about all the negative and bad feelings you got, including feeling uncomfortable. Trying to acknowledge they felt this way.
Kastner replied defensively, justifying his actions. Kastner replied defensively, justifying his actions.
Then, rather than say I wasn't being aggressive, I said I badly want to understand what precisely was interpreted as aggressive. I do not want to be defensive about this. I'm asking. I'm trying to understand. I write, from my perspective, I was voicing my concern about choosing a location near the bathrooms in the future. I didn't even deny Vivers' perspective. Being defensive would be saying, no way, I was not aggressive. I said, help me understand what you interpreted as aggressive. I did go on to say, was it my tone of voice? Was it my body language? What exactly was aggressive? Help me understand this.
Kastner replied defensively, justifying his actions.
They're saying that they want to stay in communicating, right? They didn't say after this bad experience, please don't talk to me at future events. Nothing like that. But I don't want them to feel bad. So I need to know, because again, from my perspective, I could not understand what exactly I could have possibly done. Maybe they thought I was standing too close. I just don't know. It was really confusing to me. That's why I asked them, do you have anxiety? Because nothing I could think of, I thought that I was behaving perfectly normal like any other day. Any of the dozens of times we've been at flow art events, nothing seemed different about that day other than I asked if we could do a place with bathrooms next time. I asked what exactly was aggressive. Again, similar to the anxiety thing, I asked Vivers if she had anxiety, and in her video, she says, he accused me of having anxiety. I said, help me understand what was aggressive. And instead of seeing that as a question, she says in her video that I was being defensive. I didn't say, no, I wasn't aggressive, or how dare you accuse me of being aggressive. I said, help me understand. That's not defensive. I write, I sincerely hope all of this stuff. I really hope that you know I didn't intend to make you feel bad. I'm very sorry about the negative and bad feelings you got. I said sorry twice in the first couple sentences, and that's what Vivers is saying is defensive. She's lying to you if you watched her video. Is she going to show any of this? Of course not. Vivers isn't going to show any evidence of anything that they're saying. Their 20-minute video is completely packed with lies. This lower part, this is about the rope dart pickup where I did go shopping with my mentor. I explained to them my perspective by saying I wasn't just like dropping by randomly. Me and my mentor were like going out shopping. That's where it says have another person with me. I just go there. So I say like if I was shopping at some store, and I had another person with me, I just go there. I don't call ahead or something. But again, this is what Vivers is saying is defensive, because they did communicate after the fact that made that feel uncomfortable. And I get that. And they didn't even use that word. They just said, hey, that's common courtesy that you tell me you're coming with another person. And I get that. So what do I say? I said, I'm not telling you this to say what I did was okay.
Kastner replied defensively, justifying his actions.
I hope you know it was a mistake, and I'm sorry. Not going to happen again.
Kastner replied defensively, justifying his actions.
I go on to say, I wasn't thinking I have some idea to surprise Corinne. I hope you can forgive my mistake sometime. I say, I'm sorry about that. This is where I say, wonder if this experience will help if you have another local pickup. Maybe in the future you just need to clarify so someone else doesn't make this mistake. I fully admit that I get that they could feel some kind of way about that and that I'm sorry about that. This is what Vivers is saying is defensive. I've never heard of a defensive person saying how sorry they are, even admitting that they made a mistake, saying, I hope you can forgive my mistake sometime, acknowledging and saying sorry multiple times. But Vivers says, I accuse them of having anxiety when all I did was ask them if they have anxiety. And they say, I got defensive. But just like some other things, this goes with the secret rules. Vivers has these secret boundaries that they have in their head. They haven't communicated. I even in my email, I said, hey, I understand if someone was in the room and you're on speakerphone, it could be common courtesy to let them know in context of, I'm going to be there in 20 minutes. Is that cool? While I'm driving. Okay, cool. See you in 20 minutes. Click. Is very different from having some long personal type of conversation about sorts of private things. Vivers is completely leaving out the context of that phone call.